Game of Thrones, Season 6, Episode 8. No one is over, but we're just getting started here on the Game of Thrones post-show recap here on postshowrecaps.com. And now, here are the two guys who are certainly a couple of Nancy boys. I'm Rob Cesternino. Here's Josh Wigler. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well. Had a decent dinner, though typically I prefer chicken. So I'm a little disappointed about that.
Yes, oh boy. Well, we've got a lot to get to tonight. How about a waif? You prefer a chicken wafer?
Wafers, chicken-flavored wafers? I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
No.
That
Yeah.
sounds like real hound food, dog food.
So, Josh, a lot to talk about tonight. The waif is gone, the blackfish is gone, and a lot of other possibilities and theories are gone, and a lot to talk about here tonight on the Game of Thrones post-show recap.
Yeah, that Arya thing ended up being fairly straightforward.
Yep. Stephen Fishback and I talked about all the different scenarios. I read theory after theory on the internet, and just goes to show you, not everything you read on the internet is true.
Now that is going to be bad for business for us, I think, because that's really what we have been trading on for the past couple of years, is that everything you hear right here on Post-Show Recaps is going to be factually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, maybe not.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think that Steven and I, as we went through all of the possible theories, we were pretty much like, that is a theory, but I don't see how that's right. I don't see how that's right. We didn't come up with anything that we landed on in terms of how Arya was going to get out of that jam. Who knew? Just some chicken soup and a Band-Aid.
Yeah, the power of chicken soup is really, really strong. I mean, you've heard that chicken soup is good for the soul, but apparently it's good for holes in your belly as well. That will heal you right up. Some crane soup.
If only the Lady Crane had been a guest at the Red Wedding. I feel like the whole course of Game of Thrones could have been radically different.
I still think that Robb Stark would have had problems. You know, like getting his head cut off and like having a direwolf head reattached to his body. I don't know if chicken soup is that powerful, but it would have been nice to see them try.
That would have been nice. What are you going to do? All right, so we got a lot to do here tonight. We are live, hashtag PS Recaps, also on our YouTube channel at postshowrecaps.com/YouTube, and a lot of stuff to go through. And Josh, let's not bury the lead. This is the first time since Hold the Door, that Josh Wigler is back on a podcast with me talking about an episode of Game of Thrones.
On a live show at the very least. But yeah, we've had 2 weeks in between where Antonio Mazzaro has been holding the door down. So thank you, Maester Mazzaro. Great stuff on your end. But Rob, I missed you. This is fun. It's great to be live again.
Great to be live once again. And here we are after episode number 8. Josh, just 2 weeks left. 14 days from now, we'll be talking about a supersized finale of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, this season has flown by. It has just been feeling like it's been going so fast all the way through, and still, like, nothing prepares you for the fact that you're up to the penultimate episode. And the penultimate episode of any given season is typically the biggest episode of any season. Last year was the big exception, with Hardhome coming in at episode 8, and that's really the massive episode of that year. But here we are. We're on the cusp of episode 9. By counts, I don't know how much we want to get into that. Maybe later. The preview for episode 9 looks pretty colossally huge. So I think that, you know, the season has gone really fast, but these next 2 episodes that we're going to get into feels like there's going to be a lot to sink our teeth into. Lots of chicken soup to feast on in the coming episodes.
Okay. All right. Let me just adjust one thing
for my chat room. Okay. How about that for you guys in the chat? Is that a difference for you, Josh?
Yeah, you sound like an angel from heaven.
Yeah. All right.
But that's not really new. It's just a more clear angel from heaven.
All right, there you go. All right, so that being said, let's jump into talking about the Arya Bowl that happened tonight. It was Arya versus the Waif. Josh, what was your take on all of this? Because to me, I felt like a little bit sort of cheated in that Arya sort of had the Wolverine powers of healing to get over, 5 or 6 stab wounds from a trained assassin to the gut last episode. She turns out just sleep on it, rub some dirt on it, you'll be okay. She engages in a chase around Braavos, which I did not find to be particularly great, the chase. And then we get to Arya versus the Waif in the dark.
Yeah, you didn't like the T-1000 aspect of it. You didn't like that this was kind of a Arya 2 Judgment Day. That wasn't you. That wasn't
I mean,
scratching any itches for you.
I certainly had that same exact thought. I mean, why does the waif, when Arya is far away from her, she can run, but as she gets closer to Arya, she starts going very slow? I did not really understand what Arya or
Busting
what.
out the busting
I
out the
mean,
Batman walk.
the whole thing to me was poor Lady Crane. Why did she have to get even involved with all of this? That she ends up taking care of Arya, and what does she get for her troubles?
I don't know. Like she certainly gets killed, but like, how did she get killed? Like, I'm just like that mental image of her with like the chair and being collapsed. It looked like her throat was slit, but it also kind of looked like she was impaled on some chair stools. It just looked really awful. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the tape and see exactly how Lady Crane died, but it looked very, very graphic, and yet she didn't scream at all. So that's just a testament to the fact that the waif is probably really good at killing people.
Is she though? I mean, the waif.
Not very good at killing Arya, but good
No,
at killing
I mean,
everybody else.
she sneaks into Lady Crane's house, has to wear a disguise. Does Lady Crane know the waif?
Lady Crane sees, and I believe it was Alex Kidwell who said, "Is that Carrie Elways? Is that
Yeah.
is that Wesley?"
I thought it was David
Roberts.
Spade. Yeah, and then she gets in, and then Arya, all of a sudden, I mean, she's basically like Spider-Man running around Braavos, even without being stabbed a bunch of times. She goes down to the streets, and nobody like pulls her aside, like, little girl, what are you doing? You knocked over every orange in Braavos. And then there's another, girl just walking down the street, like jumping off walls, trying to terrorize her. We did get the payoff to the candle business. I did like the final execution of it, but I just felt like it took a long way to get there.
It took a long way to get there. I'll tell you what, I mean, that made it easier for me to recap tonight, so we're on a little bit earlier, so I'm not complaining on that level. But it did feel, I don't know, it felt like it went really quickly. It felt like, I think a lot of people probably felt like there should have been a little more payoff in terms of Arya versus the waif, the actual fight between them, and Arya cuts the candle, and we cut to black, and the next thing we know, we're in the House of Black and White. So I think maybe some people are frustrated by that aspect. I'm really good with that part. I like that the next thing you see is the waif's freaking face pinned up in the Hall of Faces. I thought that was pretty sweet. But what did you think? Did you want to see the actual physical duel between Arya and Arya 2, the final fight?
No, I'm fine with it. I felt like you could have gotten this right after Arya in episode 6 blows out the candle after she does not end up killing Lady Crane. I felt like that last week's episode was completely unnecessary in terms of Arya buying a spot on the ship and then getting stabbed and having to go to Lady Crane. I felt like you had Arya in the dark with the candle. The waif could have just shown up at Arya's door. She found her. She's an assassin. Blow out the candle, kill the waif, and I feel like we could have saved an episode of this story, which we really just stretched out Arya and versus the waif for over 3 episodes.
You know, it stretches out for a little while, for sure, and I can see that point completely. But I think one of the things that's great about it is I think that it kind of sums up Arya's journey that we've seen from her on Thrones so far. This is a young kid who got gut stabbed several times emotionally throughout her run. She watched her own father die. She was this close to reuniting with her brother and her mom, and then they're brutally murdered basically right in front of her. She sees her brother's body being paraded around with Grey Wind's head on it. She has just been through the ringer. You know, time after time she has been stabbed in the gut, and yet she keeps running. She improbably keeps surviving. She keeps fighting her way through, and somehow she always finds her way through the other side of the darkness and is still standing. We get a very literal version of that across the end of last week's episode and the main action in the Arya story this week. So I like that it kind of plays that metaphor out in a pretty literal way. I can understand people being a little frustrated by it, but I don't mind it that much. It didn't stick in my craw the way that it seems to, or my Lady Crane the way that it seems to for so many people. But I definitely understand people who thought it was a little frustrating. I think that it was a cool statement on where Arya has been and maybe where she's going now that she has survived all of this. Now that she's survived all of that metaphorically and now physically, what's the next move for Arya? And it seems like the next move is home, and that's exciting.
Well, I think that the reason why there was frustration with this storyline, I think that a lot of people came out of last week like, hold on, there's no way Arya could be so dumb as to be out in broad daylight buying passage back to Westeros. She had to have known that the waif is coming for her. Why wouldn't she be carrying Needle with her? She has her sword. Obviously, she's one step ahead of the waif. Or, no, that's not Arya, that's Jack and Hagar, because he wants the waif to do something. It was like, nope, Arya was just kind of careless about the whole thing after she was so excited about going back to Westeros. She just kind of forgot for a little while the waif could be anybody and could be trying to kill her.
I don't know. I think that's a lot to put on Arya. And I mean, listen, I certainly have my own theories about this show, and they don't always play out as expected, and I get disappointed. But I think that oftentimes that's more a me thing than the show. I think to expect Arya to be this crazy super genius who was gaming the waif the whole time, while that could have been really fun, I don't know that that's necessarily in line with Arya's character. Arya is at best like a 16-year-old kid. She's probably younger than that. Give the kid some credit. Also, Braavos is a big city. She certainly, it would have helped if Arya had been wandering around wearing a different face. Maybe that would thing to do. I don't know. She could have just like yanked one while she was walking around on the streets. I don't think that really works. But I don't know. I think that feels a lot like the weeks between, as much as Game of Thrones goes fast during the season, those weeks can be really long between episodes, and we think a lot about what's going on in the cliffhangers and possible theories of where stories are going, and it just so happens that the Arya one was fairly straightforward. And I think that because it didn't have a more creative, outside-the-box solution, maybe that feels a little more disappointing. I don't know. I guess I just don't feel that same.
It's fine. I wasn't one of the truthers on the Arya theories at all. I shot down all the ones that I heard. I just was a little disappointed with what it just actually turned out to be. But in terms of Arya's journey to Braavos, which began at the end of season 4, Josh, it has been now 18 episodes in Braavos. Was the juice worth the squeeze as Arya heads back to the West?
I don't. My first instinct is no. My first instinct is this was a lot of time to spend in Braavos for Arya if she's not coming back with anything physically new. I think she's coming back with a renewed sense of self. I think she's coming back feeling like, yeah, I am Arya Stark, and I've got business to attend to back home, and that's great. But did we need 18 episodes with the Faceless Men to get there? Not convinced that we did, but maybe there's going to be some sort of sucker punch later on down the line. Maybe this isn't completely over, but as it stands, if it was just to get Arya feeling a little more firmly Arya, then yeah, it felt like a long time to have her in Braavos for.
I mean, I kind of feel like that at the point she went to Braavos, she was at this same exact spot in terms of that she left the Hound for dead. She had a spring in her step. She was on the side of the boat looking off into the distance like, Braavos, here I come. I'm ready to take on the world. Where it seems as though she's leaving. She's maybe a better fighter now. I think that's maybe you could say that.
Yeah, she's well trained. Yeah, she's a good killer now. I mean, she was always a good killer, but she's a great killer now.
Okay. All right. So that's the Arya storyline. But Jack and Hagar took it all pretty well.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, good for you. Look what you did. That was awesome. Big thumbs up.
Yeah.
Very proud of you."
Yeah, Jack and Hagar's like, you got one over on the waif.
I didn't like her anyway, so thanks for that.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Thanks for that. I mean, she was my number one assistant, and now I'll have to find somebody new. But it's been fun.
Replaceable.
Been fun. Let me know if you need a letter of recommendation anywhere, Arya.
They're just gonna find Arya 3, and everything's gonna be fine.
All right. So let's then talk about a bunch of other big stories tonight. You want to talk about the end of the siege on Riverrun and the departure of the Blackfish, Jaime and Brienne reunion?
Oh, R.I.P. Blackfish. I'm glad at least the Backfish is alive and well, but that seems to be it for Brynden Tully. No more. Yet the Riverrun story happened really in a blink of an eye, it felt like. And you got to wonder what good came out of Brienne going to the Riverlands other than to say goodbye to Jaime Lannister. It felt like, this whole thing that they've been making a little bit of a big deal of was wrapped up pretty quickly. And man, Edmure Tully, grow a spine, guy. Figure that out. Figure yourself out.
Okay, Josh, could you fill me in? I mean, what do you think that Jaime told him that made Edmure Tully go in and do what he did?
Well, in fairness, Jaime did threaten something pretty awful. You know, Jaime is talking to him. He's like, "Hey, I hear you have a son. Good for you." And it turns out that Edmure got his wife pregnant on the night of the Red Wedding. So the Red Wedding was a terrible night for so many people, but for Edmure, it was okay. So he has like an infant child.
Something. I mean, I kind of feel like they sort of like leave the room, close the door.
Right.
You would have heard some of the Red Wedding of it all.
Edmure Tully has very bad hearing. Earwax buildup. It's a real problem.
I guess so. He's got a one-track mind. Right.
One-track mind. Yeah, he was just like, yes, I got the hot phrase, sister. This is great. So he did his thing. He has a baby now. That's like the only good thing that came out of that he hasn't seen his child in this entire time that he's been held captive. And Jaime basically says to him, if you don't go into River Run right now and get them to surrender, I'm going to call for your baby, and I'm going to catapult him into River Run. That's a pretty visceral threat. So, you know, that's bad. That's bad. That would be very bad if Jaime did. I don't feel like the Jaime Lannister we know now would do that. Then again, Jaime Lannister did push a 10-year-old boy out a window in the very first episode of this show, so who knows what Jaime's capable of.
Oh, I think that Jaime would tell you what he's capable of. He said last week that, like, what kind of a threat is it when you threaten to do something and then aren't willing to do? Like, if I tell you to stop talking or I'll punch you in the face, and the guy kept talking and he punched him in the face. So I think that Jaime is very willing to do whatever he says he's going to do. But for Edmure, I mean, did it come down to all those times where the Blackfish said, you could kill him. Go for it. I don't care.
I think that's got to be a part of it. I don't think that the Blackfish and Edmure had a lot of love lost between them even before that. The first time you see either of these guys on the show is back in season 3 when Lord of House Tully has died and they're kind of giving him like the Viking funeral, and Edmure can't hit him with the flaming arrow, and the Blackfish is just like, oh, Edmure, you're the worst. Let me do this. So I think that they never really cared for each other to begin with.
So where does this storyline go now? So now the Lannisters or the Freys are holding River Run. Where do we go from here with this?
Yeah, well, I think that Jaime was basically saying, like, I want to wrap this up fast. I want to get this done as quickly as humanly possible.
You and me both,
Jaime. Yeah, well, listen, if only Dorne could have gone this quickly, right? If only they could have answered the Dorne story in 2 episodes. But Jaime, you know, he said, like, I got to get back to King's Landing. I got to solve this problem here in River Run, and then I got to go back to King's Landing. Cersei needs me. So I think that Jaime's just going to be riding back to King's Landing and couldn't be happening any sooner. Very good thing that he is getting to go back there very soon because things certainly look bleak there. But why we needed this story here in the Riverlands, I really don't have anything great to say. Like, I feel like this was a story that, you know, this is a story from the books. It's a lot longer in the books. It's kind of ongoing in the books. And it's done in 2 episodes here on the show. Felt very fast to me. Not really sure what the grand scheme point is, other than it was nice to get Jaime and Brienne back in the same scene together.
I'll tell you what, I don't have any complaints about this.
Okay.
I'm fine with this. You know, if it's going to be short and we're kind of like, I don't know what the point was, it was worth the ride because it was fun to see Jaime and Brienne back together. Don't tell me it wasn't fun to see Jaime and Bronn on this trip.
It was really great to see Bronn and Pod back.
Don't tell me that wasn't great.
That was great. That was really fun. I liked that. I liked the Bronn and Podrick romance. I think is underrated.
Yeah, no, that was really good. And then we had at the end of the episode, Brienne is trying to get the Blackfish to get in the boat with her, and he's like, no, I can't. So they just leave, and then you had like that long, like wistful goodbye between Jaime and Brienne on the boat. Felt like Pod could have been rowing the boat a little faster.
Who's the better rower, Podrick or Gendry?
I think Gendry is probably still rowing, and Pod is really just like, you know, out on Central Park, just like going for a little leisurely, like they're close enough where Jaime can like distinctly make out, hey, that's Brienne and Pod rowing away here on the river. I think that they would get a little pep in their step, or maybe have Brienne take over the rowing.
So you're saying that this like morning training and night training, an hour in the an hour at night that Brienne and Pod are doing, they should really introduce the rowing machine into the routine.
Right. Or maybe they already did their training and they could have just done a cardio day, so with that Podrick would have some strength saved up to row the boat out of there.
Right. Yeah.
That would have been good. But,
do you think that that's going to end up being the point of the River Run story, is because Brienne and Pod now are going to row right into Gendry, and it's like, oh, hey, come with us.
That would be good. But where did Gendry take off from? From Dragonstone? I don't know if he's going to be on the river there.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to happen, but maybe he's just like this majestic rower where improbable things happen to him on the open
look,
seas.
'Tis the season of characters we haven't seen in about 3 years just showing up fine like nothing happened.
Yeah,
I mean, next would be not so crazy.
You know, speaking of that, like there had to have been, at least during this week, at least like a half an ounce of thought put into the idea that like Syrio Forel is just going to show up and save Arya. So the fact that that didn't happen, I feel like broke a trend on Game of Thrones this season. That like this old forgotten character didn't suddenly spring back to life to save the day.
Okay, speaking of old forgotten characters that spring back to life, let's talk about Beric Dondarrion. He's back as well, and we talked about last week, the Brotherhood without manners, just showing up and killing everybody. And then he said, what's with these guys now? They're bad guys now?
They went rogue. They went rogue, or Rourg, if you'd like.
A couple of bad apples in the Brotherhood.
Yeah, a bad lemon cloak.
Yes.
One really sour lemon.
Yeah, so those guys were just giving the Brotherhood without banners a bad name. Lots of a killing spree for the Hound tonight.
The Hound was back. It seemed like the Hound was at least in retirement or, totally put to bed for a little while, and then Brother Ray died, and the Hound was reborn. He picked up that axe, and he was ready to kick ass, and he took some of these guys down in pretty epic ways. He like cleaved one guy's head off with one swing of this little hand axe. That was crazy. It's always fun to see the Hound in action. He is a memorable character, that guy. It's great to have him back on Game of Thrones.
I will say there is certainly a trope on Game of Thrones at this point where it's a little bit sort of like 1980s horror movie where I think that the people who are out there, like there's a little bit of a puritanical view from the world of Game of Thrones where, anybody who's just like, it was me and this prostitute over in the brothel, okay? And then, like, that character is dead by the end of that scene.
Yeah. Like, any time that there's, like, between, like, two common folks, there's, like, any sort of, like, bragging about sexual escapades.
Ribald talk, yeah.
Yeah, one or more people will get killed. That's why, like, it's not gentlemanly to have these kinds of conversations, and in the world of Game of Thrones, you pay for it.
You know who I felt bad for? The guy who was just trying to get some love advice from the other guy, and he seemed like he was really earnest about it. And the guy's like, "Okay, you do this, and then all of a sudden,
he got the whoop-de-doo.
Right, yeah. And first off, I'd be like, "Joke's on you, buddy." I don't know about like.
Oh, gross.
Right. I mean, what is that? What's that? Like, find the nearest bar of soap now.
Yeah, clean up.
Yeah.
Time to clean up. Find like a station would be after that. But yeah, what an unpleasant final few seconds of life for that guy who got his head cut off and got violated in this way. I don't think he was really asking for that.
No.
It was bad. It was very bad.
Did not ask for it. All right, so the Hound, I thought it was a funny scene between him and Beric Dondarrion, at least. Like the business of the scene of the negotiation between how many of those guys that the Hound was going to get to kill.
Yeah, and I like the Hound basically saying like, "Oh, this is so annoying. There used to be a time where I would just like gut all of you just so I could gut these guys, but I'm a different guy, trying to be cool, trying to keep it cool right now. The Hound has turned over a new leaf. It's great. It was just great to see Beric Dondarrion and Thoros back again. Didn't really expect to see those guys, and you forget so many details about this show, but those two characters have a lot of history with the Hound from that one trial by combat back in season 4, or maybe it's season 3 in fact. And it's like this totally different view of these three people in relation to each other. Where it was very antagonistic once upon a time, and now here we have Beric and Thoros being like, yo, Sandrine, you're a badass, and we need as many badasses as we can get. Please join the Brotherhood without banners. And Hound basically, it seems like, is on board with this.
Yeah, well, he's got nothing else to do.
Yeah, his Brotherhood is dead.
Yeah.
The brother Ray with banners is gone. So the Hound needs a new crew to jam with. And what's great is he's going to go north. He's going to go fight some White Walkers. How awesome is it going to be to see the Hound in that atmosphere? I feel like that's a really great spot for the Hound. Get him up the wall. Get him fighting those guys. I think that's going to be good.
So are we getting a Hound reunion with Sansa?
That would be a good guess, I think. I mean, she's in the north. He's heading north. They have history together as well. I think that you could very easily see the Hound and Sansa fighting on the same side, and I think that you could see them aligning with each other, and I think that would be certainly going to be very exciting for a lot of Game of Thrones fans on Tumblr. I think a lot of people are going to be really happy about this.
Okay, we'll see where that goes. But what's in it for the Brotherhood without banners? I mean, we've brought these people back now at this point, Josh. Oh, and where is their story taking them?
Well, I mean, we don't know what they've been up to since we've seen them last. Obviously, some people in the Brotherhood have gone rogue and have been operating on their own, and those guys, got handled the way they got handled. But what have they been doing in the meantime? We haven't heard a ton about them recently. But Beric is saying, look, Lord of Light is telling us that there is some icy nonsense going up near that wall, and we need to go take care of that. And I think that you're seeing on the show, as far as Meereen, you're seeing a lot of Red Priests talking about the Great War. And you saw that woman, Kinvara, a few episodes going to Tyrion and being like, yeah, Daenerys is the one who's promised, and we have to fight this big battle. So I think that the Lord of Light disciples seem to all be on message with there is some really awful thing that is about to come and hit the land of the living, and we need to go take care of the dead before we're all dead. And Thoros and Beric seem to be heading that way. I mean, I don't know why they weren't already on their way there. It feels like that probably would have been a wise thing to do to get there a little sooner, but they're on their way, and Hound is going there, and I think that a lot of our stories, a lot of our main stories, not all of them, are pushing toward the north. And I think at some point, whether it's next season or if it's the season after that, allegedly there's 2 final seasons of Game of Thrones coming up. I feel like when we get to those opening credit sequences in the future, it's like all the wandering around the map. I think it's all going to be pretty isolated there in the north.
Yeah, super isolated.
Isolated, yeah. It's very
so.
Good.
All right, let's go back down to King's Landing and talk about the latest happenings there. And we ended up seeing a little bit of action for Sir Robert Strong this week as Cersei is requested, her presence is requested by the High Sparrow. Cousin Lancel tries to summon her, and she denies that request.
Were you happy to not see the High Sparrow in this episode? Were you happy to get a break?
Where was
from the
he today?
Sparrow? His day off.
Day off? Okay. All right. So even on the 7th day, the High Sparrow rests.
Yeah, he rests. He puts on shoes on that day.
Yeah. All right. So it was good to see Sir Robert Strong actually do something. Interesting to see somebody try to come at Sir Robert Strong with an axe, the weapon of choice by his brother, the Hound, at this point.
Yeah, man. Listen, that Clegane Bowl hype is still real, I think, even though Trial by Combat has been taken off the board. I've never been a proponent of Trial by Combat and the Clegane Bowl have to be the same thing. I still think that we're going to get the 2 Clegane brothers. I think those guys are going to fight. And I think that that's a great call-out, that someone was using an axe against Robert Strong, and that is what the Hound was using in this episode. But man, it was so great to see the Mountain in action, and he didn't, pop anybody's head the way that he did with the Red Viper. But that was still a pretty slick move. That was a pretty great Mortal Kombat fatality, just like pulling the guy's head off and tossing it away. And everyone else in the Faith Militant was like, yeah, let's not fight this guy. Let's go home. Let's also rest today.
Cersei has good reactions to all that stuff too.
Oh, she loved it. She's like, oh, that's great.
She goes and, Tommen has the State of the Kingdom address, and Cersei can't even get good seats anymore. She has to go sit in the press box with the ladies.
Back row Cersei.
Yeah, back row Cersei. And so she's back there, and, he has to mention that, by the way, I'm changing the rules. No more trial by combat. We're going to have a trial, which I found to be terrible news, Josh.
Yeah, I feel like Cersei's reaction to that is not unsimilar to Ralphie from A Christmas Story when he spills all the gears out on the side of the road. Oh, fudge.
No,
Except
but
I didn't say fudge.
it's my reaction too because a trial is going to be very boring.
Yeah, trial is going to be pretty boring. We're not going to get to a trial, are we? Are we actually going to see another trial on this show? I still feel like this thing is going to get wrapped up before we get there.
Okay, well, how it will get wrapped up, I'm not so sure. We saw Qyburn talk to Cersei about were those rumors that we were talking about? Were those true? It is very true.
Yeah,
Double true.
very true. Yeah, double true. Triple true. More true than you think. Yeah, what do you think, Rob? What's your theory about what Cersei and Qyburn are up to? Lots of theories out there on the interwebs right now.
I mean, I gotta feel like that the leading theory is that Cersei is trying to come up with some way to strike back at the people of King's Landing.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. She's definitely going to take this out on people, and anyone who's ever crossed Cersei, I think she's going to try and make those people very, very sorry. The leading theory that I'm seeing right now, and this was actually floated out by Terry Schwartz earlier in the week, and she just wrote a great article about it, Game of Thrones Book Club co-host Terry Schwartz, is could it be wildfire? Is Cersei looking into the wildfire situation? Is that what she's going to be bringing to King's Landing? I think that's a pretty good theory.
Yeah, well, you and I talked about back in, or when we did the feedback show of Bran's visions, and we saw King's Landing with wildfire, and we said, well, that hasn't happened yet, and we said, well, is it like sort of like, was it just sort of like trying to depict what the Mad King was trying to do? Is this a vision from the future? We said,
Right.
well, it just seems weird that they would do that, but all of a sudden, that's starting to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you could see it. You totally could. And I think that there's even a line from Jaime in this episode. I think our Philly pointed this out to me, that there's a line from Jaime in the episode where Cersei says, like, she would burn everybody to the ground to protect her family. You don't just, like, toss that line out there, on a feel like that's not just, like, a throwaway line. I think that's setting up Cersei is preparing some fiery vengeance, and I think that's going to be pretty sweet. It's probably going to be pretty awful for everybody who's in King's Landing, but I think in terms of pushing the story forward, I think that's going to be pretty cool.
But Josh, to me, that seems like a perfectly rational Cersei decision if something happens to Tommen, where Tommen dies, the prophecy comes true, all three of her children are dead, I have nothing left to live for.
Burn it all.
Guys, burn it all, burn them all.
Feel the burn.
But if Tommen still lives, if Tommen still reigns, I can't see Cersei doing this.
Well, I mean, I don't know if she's just, thinking about burning King's Landing to the ground, or if she's, like, thinking about wildfire as a highly targeted thing, and she's going to just, like, go specifically after the Faith Militant and go after the High Sparrow. But the thing is that wildfire would be very difficult to control.
Right.
So I think that, like, you could very easily see this would be perfectly Cersei. It's totally her MO to think that she is doing something super targeted, razor smart, just like this really incredibly carefully planned thing, and it just burns and spirals out of her control. I could really see that happening. I don't know that it would necessarily be Cersei just like, burn everything, screw everybody, I'm going home. I think that it could be, here's my last attempt at power, and then that could go really wrong. That could go really, that could get really out of her hands at a certain point.
Let me just ask you, without going too much into anything from the preview, do you feel like that next week's episode is all in the North? We didn't see Jon, Sansa, Winterfell, anything at the Wall this week. Do you feel like next week is all Wall, all North, all Winterfell?
I mean, we've been there before. We've done that before. We did that with The Wall. We did that back in Season 4. Back in Season 2, Blackwater, the penultimate, that was all King's Landing. So I could definitely see 9 being all Jon Snow's story.
There wasn't one scene in the preview, I don't believe, of anything but stuff from the North.
Right. But I think that could also mean that, like, just that storyline is something worth hyping. Like, that whole sequence is going to be so huge that that's the only thing that they really want to hype up. But I also think it's totally possible that we get nothing but the North, which would mean we've got nothing, we've got only one episode to resolve all these other storylines. So, now the season feels extra short.
But a supersized final episode.
Right. Giant size, as they would say in Monaco.
1-1, yeah. 1-1 final.
1-1 size finale, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then the other thing going on tonight was all the stuff in Marine. And boy, I mean, Tyrion, he let the dragons out, but it's really been kind of a slow. We both love the Dink. The Dink
love
is
the
great.
Dink. Huge fan.
But some of these, the Dink with Grey Worm and Missandei.
Are you
really,
trying to say this season that the Dink stinks? Are we talking about some stinky dinks this year?
He doesn't stink, but I mean, it's kind of like a little bit like, hey, winter is coming. Let's keep the ball moving here.
Right. There hasn't been a ton to do with Tyrion this year, and I think that has fallen on the decision to play out this whole Meereen storyline over the course of the season, rather than trying to wrap it up earlier. This storyline is referred to by fans as the Meereenese Knot for a reason, referred to by George R. R. Martin as that as well, and I think it's because it's a complicated story and it's difficult to untangle, and unfortunately, with the way things are with that story, there's just not a ton for Tyrion to do until it gets resolved.
But that's fine. That's fine. I understand it's a sticky situation, but knock jokes I feel like are not the answer here.
Who told the best joke tonight? Was that I thought Missandei's was pretty good.
Missandei was pretty good. I just feel like we're doing Lieutenant Commander Data, like season 3 material here with Grey Worm and Missandei.
Yeah, did Grey Worm get the emotion chip?
He's going. That's next week.
That's next week.
Yeah, but I felt like that some of these jokes were really like we went on and on and on and trying to get them to drink. I just feel like we've already visited this season, this idea.
Yeah, no, they've literally had a scene earlier this season of Tyrion desperately trying to get Missandei and Grey Worm to drink. And here
like what are you trying to do with them once they get drunk?
Here's the good news. The good news is the fit is hitting the Shan in Meereen right now.
Right.
You've got all of the slavers are rolling up just when Tyrion least expected it, thought that things were cool in Meereen, thought that he had resolved everything. Turns out he does not know this region of the world as well as he thought. You would think that his mishandling of the Valyrian language would have been a tip-off that he doesn't fully get this culture. But the slavers are here. They want their property. They are ready to tear up Meereen. And just as these ships are sailing up, we now have Daenerys flying in. Daenerys is back. You got to assume Drogon is here. Got to assume the Dothraki are not far behind. There's 2 dragons that are, free and walking around in the dungeons. Got to imagine those dragons are going to get unleashed as well. On top of it, you have this slaver fleet, but you also have the Greyjoy fleet that we know Yara and Theon want to come to Meereen and forge an alliance with Daenerys. So it's been a stretched out story. It has been a slow story this season, but you have to feel good about the odds of the final act of this story, at least for this season, being fairly explosive, with Dragonfire and Greyjoys getting in the mix. I'm really excited about that, even if it took us a really long while to get here.
Right, but it looked like that Drogon dropped off Dany in the pyramid and then was off to go pick up his next Druber passenger. Where the hell was he going? I didn't see him blasting all those ships in the bay.
Well, he's waiting. He's awaiting orders.
Where is he going?
I don't
kill them all, burn them all. She's a Targaryen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably the next move. It didn't happen in this episode. There was not enough time or budget to do that in this episode. But you got to feel pretty good about that being the next step.
You would think so. So what do you think is more likely to happen? Drogon, Greyjoys, or combined attack?
Combined attack. I think that it's going to be, we're going to see the Greyjoys help out. We're going to see the dragons help out. I think that's how we're going to get our 1,000 ships for Daenerys. The Greyjoys are going to come in. The good news, too, is if they can conquer a bunch of these slavers, maybe it behooves them not to destroy all of these ships, because it's hey, let's kill all these slavers and steal their ships and row them back to Westeros.
Maybe Drogon can eat people off the ships.
Yeah, just swoop in and scorch some people and make it happen, yeah.
Yeah. The Dany-Tyrion relationship, when she hears about how badly Tyrion screwed this up, what's her move? Banish him?
Awkward. Yeah, I think it's going to be uncomfortable. I feel like just for story purposes, she's gotta at least like loosely forgive him or forgive him enough to bring him along to Westeros. We're not stranding Tyrion Lannister in Essos this season. That would really
not that strand. Oh, no.
Strand.
Different strand.
Strand. Yeah, maybe he will find the Abigail.
Tyrion,
Yeah, I don't think that's what's happening. I think Tyrion has to go back to Westeros, so maybe Dany's gonna be angry enough to turn him into a prisoner, and he'll be a high-value prisoner or something like that. But you can't imagine that she is going to be psyched about how he politically handled this situation. He really, set Meereen up big fall here.
Did you feel like Tyrion was breaking the fourth wall when he said to Varys that, no, not the most popular dwarf in the city, most popular in the world?
Most famous in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, life and art, they imitate each other sometimes.
Absolutely. Where's Varys going, Josh?
No idea. Great question. He says, we need more ships. We need some friends in Westeros. I'm going to go handle that. Who is he going to befriend? Who does he want to make nice with?
I don't know. Where's his landing spot in Westeros? Is it a King's Landing spot?
The King's Landing spot? I don't think that he's exactly welcome there. So if I'm Varys, I'm going anywhere but King's Landing. King's Landing is not my King's Landing spot. Maybe go to the north. That's where all of the hustle and bustle seems to be. Maybe you can recruit some Starks. If he, maybe he feels like if he's heard enough about this White Walker action, maybe he wants to go north. I don't know. Maybe he's going to try and recruit the Greyjoys. Maybe he's going to come sailing back on a Greyjoy ship.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you sort of open up the possibilities, Nunya Business in the chat room is saying Dorne for sure. I mean, that
interesting.
would be sort of interesting. There's been a long-standing relationship between the Targaryens and Dorne. So that's a possibility that maybe if he could recruit them to come back into it, maybe, with everything going on if he could somehow get to what's going on at the Citadel, I feel like Sam might be an interesting ally for Varys.
That would be fun. I'd be into Saris.
You could tie that back into everything going on at the Wall with Sam being down there. I'm not sure how he would know to go look for him there, but I think that wherever Varys lands should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out what his King's Landing spot is.
Right. And then anything else from this week's episode?
No, you want to hit some cues?
All right, let's get the questions up and let's dive in. Hashtag PS Recaps. Why don't we start off with Fernando, who wants to say, Cersei loves Jaime, Jaime loves Cersei, Brienne loves Jaime, Tormund loves Brienne, I love Tormund, but he's going to die.
What? Why? Why does he have to die?
Yeah.
Fernando, that's negative thinking. We cannot think negatively about Tormund Giantsbane. We have to believe that Tormund Giantsbane is going to make it out of this thing alive.
What'd you think about Bronn shipping Jaime and Brienne?
Loved it. I thought that was great. It's oh yeah, you could feel it. Those two want a bone. They want to do it. Let's make it happen.
Bronn's shipping.
From Dave Backer. Dave says, so is the end of the episode the intended outcome of Arya's training all along? What do you think about that, Rob? Do you think that this is what Jaqen H'ghar wanted the whole time? Do you think that he wanted Arya to kill his second in command, learn all of these cool tricks, and ultimately not become a faceless man at all?
I mean, it seems like a really long way to go to get to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably not furious with the outcome. I think that Jaqen H'ghar has fondness for Arya Stark.
Yes.
I think that, they've been through a good amount together. I think that he has always seen potential in her. I think that he has seen what she has been through. I think what he admires about her is her strength. Otherwise, he never would have taken her on. And I think at a certain point of getting to know somebody, sometimes you can tell when a thing just isn't working out, and that doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't make them a bad person. But I think Jaqen H'ghar in this moment with Arya kind of figures out, yeah, you're not faceless material, but you're still pretty cool. Go off and do your thing. You're released. No problems here. Have a good rest of your life.
Okay. Wow. So nice.
Do you think we'll ever see Jaqen H'ghar again, or do you think that's that?
I think that maybe we see somebody and then he pulls his face off and it was it was Jaqen H'ghar. They're just bailing you out of that trouble, Arya.
Yeah, I mean, we're still the theory is still out there.
Like a Steve Buscemi at the end of Billy Madison type moment.
I'm glad I called that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the theory is still out there that everybody is Jaqen H'ghar.
Wow.
And until proven otherwise, you should suspect that every single character on this show is Jaqen H'ghar.
Okay, let's take another question. This is from Robert Miller. Since Arya is now no one, does that mean she is technically a faceless man? No, I don't think she's no one at all. Right?
No, yeah, no one is dead. She killed no one. She's done with no one. She's straight up Arya now. That's great.
Okay, so wait, so I just want to get this straight. So who is no one?
No one.
Yes, who is no one?
Yeah, that's right. No one.
Okay, is the waif no one?
No, that's the waif. She was no one. Now she's no one.
Who's one?
No one.
There's no one?
No one. Yeah.
All right. Geek Furious was so you think this episode confirms that D&D have given the writing duties of Arya?
Down.
Thumbs
down on this question.
Okay.
Geek Furious, you're so mad. Get over it. The show's great. Love the show.
All right.
Really emphasizing the Furious on that Geek Furious over there.
He's pissed.
Janine Curtis says, I'm just glad they didn't go the Fight Club route. Yeah, a lot of people wondering if the waif was an alternate personality of Arya Stark. I would have been real bummed about that. That just does not feel like a great direction for that story to go in.
I mean, there were so many elaborate theories all over Reddit and YouTube in the last 7 days, and they were just all over the place, and they were just all wrong. Between that, Arya learned how, like, she had this elaborate, using the remember the thing that made the fart noises during the play? They took that thing, filled it with pig's blood, and that's how Arya was able to get stabbed and live, to tell the story about it.
Oh, my God. Listen, at the point where we're at on Game of Thrones right now, where Jon Snow was straight up dead for 2 episodes and then is brought back to life with magic, it doesn't have to get much more elaborate than that. And I think things can be fairly straightforward every once in a while.
Yeah. I think sometimes we're falling into traps with this stuff, and I think that maybe part of the problem here is that in the books, I think that those things are being set up in different ways, but I kind of feel like that the TV show is a much more straightforward shot. Occam's needle is what's going on here.
Yeah. The show swerves and twists and turns in its own way, but I do think oftentimes, I don't think it's going out of its way to do like a big, shocking reveal like that. Like I think that Arya gets stabbed, Arya overcomes getting stabbed, and that's the story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What about Natalie in Chicago?
Natalie said, do you think the series wrap on Jaqen H'ghar? Would you be fine if we never saw this character again? So we just talked about this for a hot second, about whether or not we would see Jaqen again. Would you be sad if we never saw Jaqen H'ghar again, Rob? Would that bum you out? Would it be a bummer to never see Jaqen H'ghar?
Nope, it would not. I feel like I'm good with Jaqen H'ghar, and I'm ready for Arya to do anything else besides pursue a career with the Faceless Men and women.
Yeah, no, Jaqen H'ghar was awesome. Great character, is awesome. Faceless people. Jaqen H'ghar is still alive. He is still out there. You never know where that story could go. If it were me, I would say keep him on the bench. That's a good enough ending for that character. I don't think that there's really any strong need to bring him back into the proceedings. I think that you could leave Jaqen there.
I'm very fine if he just shows up in the finale.
To take a final curtain call?
Yes. I'm hoping the finale they bring every character back for the finale, like the Seinfeld finale.
Like everyone just gets to bow, and it's all been the play in Braavos the whole time.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
That's the ending of Game of Thrones. Alex Kidwell behind the scenes says, Tom and Watch, on a scale of Arya to Ollie, how bad does he suck right now?
Oh, come on.
Arya being the best, I assume.
Tommen is just like a little dumb idiot more so than he sucks, right?
Yeah, but he just completely outlawed trial by combat across the 7 kingdoms. That sucks. Trial by combat's awesome. Those scenes are always great. So I'm annoyed about that. I'm definitely annoyed about that. But I think Tommen is a kid who is easily manipulated and he's in a bad spot right now. I feel bad for Tommen. I feel bad for Tommen more than I hate Tommen, I would say.
Yeah, I have no ill will towards Tommen at this point.
Yeah. Bradley Huffer continues the question, says, whose idea was it to discontinue trial by combat? Was it Tommen, the High Sparrow, Marjorie? This reeks of High Sparrow to me.
Now, we know Marjorie has a plan. You don't think it could potentially be part of Marjorie's plan?
I guess it could be part of Marjorie's plan. But for Marjorie, wouldn't it be advisable to go trial by combat? Because Loras is not. But Loras isn't likely
Tyrells are a very rich house. They have the best lawyers in the Seven Kingdoms. They are going to get off on a technicality.
And you think their lawyers are better at lawyering than Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, would be at trial by combat against like one of these schmohawks of Faith Militant?
Well, have you seen Loras Tyrell lately? He's really in no shape to fight. I mean, he hasn't exactly been, partying around the Faith Militant.
We don't know what kind of workout routine he's been doing inside the cells. Like, well, maybe his upper body strength is really strong right now.
Yeah, you're saying maybe he's been like curled up into a medicine ball and sort of just like doing crunches himself.
He is the medicine ball.
Yeah. No, I think that maybe, hopefully, it's all hell breaks loose before we get to that point.
But you think that this was a Marjorie plan. You don't think that this was a High Sparrow call. To me, it feels like this is what the High Sparrow does. He's like, oh, Cersei's going to use the mountain. We are taking trial by combat off the table.
No, I agree. I think it's more likely the High Sparrow. And don't forget Kevin Lannister. I feel like that he's on board with all this stuff, too. Because you saw, like, Pycelle was, like, right in Tommen's ear as Cersei walked in, like, whispering sweet nothings to him. So I think that the Pycelle and Kevin Lannister thing, I think that they are really in support of what's going on with the High Sparrow because it hurts Cersei.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Josh, I think that's about it. We got any other questions tonight?
We got one more from Natalie. Another Natalie question. What was the point of the River Run story to give Jaime something to do to bring closure to the Blackfish? It seemed insignificant. I kind of don't disagree.
Well, I would say let's at least see where. I mean, if we go next week and we might not see any of these characters, but if we come out of this episode 10. Everybody's back home, and then that was it. I'd say, okay, maybe. But I don't think we necessarily know that this is it yet. And also, you sort of introduced the Hound into that story, so I don't think it was necessarily fruitless.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I feel like the Hound is a side story, but maybe we just, we weren't paying attention to that region of Westeros for a while, so that kind of, reshifts our focus back into the Riverlands. Is it
possible that the Hound would run into Brienne on the way back north?
No, not impossible, and I'd be really intrigued by that. I'd be really intrigued to see what that conversation is like for the Hound to basically be like, yeah, you kicked the crap out of me. That was pretty spectacular. I'm fairly humbled by that. Let's go kick some White Walker ass together.
Love triangle, Brienne, Tormund, the Hound.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. And I feel like Tormund would be impressed by the Hound as well.
Yeah, I think everybody would be. Okay.
Tiffany Jane has one good one here. Was Danny's part of this episode from I Love Lucy? Lannister, I'm home. You got some splaining to do.
Yeah. Why is my pyramid under siege right now?
And Tyrion's like, Danny.
Yeah. I was just trying to run the city without you.
Yeah.
All right. Josh, I got a couple of options for a hashtag. We've back row Cersei. We've got no 1-1.
No 1-1 is good.
And Occam's Needle.
I like no 1-1.
I like it too. Okay. What is that? NOWUNWUN?
That would be right.
Okay.
No 1-1.
One direction. Okay.
There is no 1-1 in this episode.
All right. There you go. All right. Josh, what's coming up next this week?
We will have our feedback show, as always. Huzzah, yes. We will be back. Feedback show, Game of Thrones feedback show is coming up, so get your voicemails in, postshowrecaps.com/voicemail, or email us questions, got@postshowrecaps.com. We'll also have book club coming back up this week. We had a really fun, albeit late book club for the last episode, but we will have a more timely book club this week. Very excited to get together with Terry and talk about everything that happened in this episode. So that's what's going on. Game of Thrones coverage continues apace.
Yeah. I checked out the book club this week, Josh.
Yeah, because you're basically current, right?
I'm basic. Yes, that's right.
Basic Cesternino.
And so there you go. So yeah, very fun stuff. Lots of mega hype on the book club this season.
Yeah, get mega hype, as Terry Schwartz would say.
Okay. All right. So then that's going to do it for us here today. Special thanks to Alex Kidwell behind the scenes. Of course, you can subscribe to our Game of Thrones podcast. Don't miss any of the action. Battle of the Bastards coming up next week. It's a fan favorite.
Get mega hype. Get mega hype. The Bastard Bowl is the thing.
Yes. Snowball is happening.
Next
Sunday night. Right. We will be live with the post-show coverage of the Snowball next Sunday night. So make sure you subscribe. Go to postshowrecaps.com/GOT. iTunes. Looking forward to reading your comments on postshowrecaps.com. Take care, everybody.